Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am, it's
ma'am, it
visible.
is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So I'll take you through the legal framework which is available for startups in India. Being lawyer, I have to give you a disclaimer first so that this is just for information and knowledge sharing purpose, and don't consider this as a legal advice, because you have to take legal advice case to case basis from your specific counsel if you have some specific area of concern while working on your startup.
Hetal, sorry, can you just click on enable editing and then present it from the bottom button so that
Yeah,
it
sure.
is bigger? Just click on enable editing.
Actually, if I click that, then I'll click on the stop
Okay.
sharing button.
Sure,
Wait,
sure.
I'll
So,
close this. Is it okay now?
from the, if you see in the bottom, you can present it in the full view. Yeah.
Is it visible
Yeah.
properly now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nilam. So to start with, government is permitting startups to run their business in 3 different categories. One is registered partnership firm. So ensure that if you are doing it through a partnership, you are registered. Unregistered partnership firms are not considered as a startup. Second option is limited liability company, limited liability partnership. And third is private limited company. Amongst three, private limited company is most advantageous and most secure form of startup which one can start, because of course it has a lot of compliances, but then it has lot of it gives lot of comfort and safety to the incoming investor. So most of the startups go for private limited company as a form of their startup and not with a limited liability and partnership firm. If you are registered in any of these 3 categories, then under Startup India scheme, you have exemption for tax payment from your incorporation date for the period of 10 years. You will be recognized as a startup unless you exceed turnover of 100 crores. So you have to ensure that your turnover is within that limit. If you are crossing that limit, then even if you have completed 10 years from your registration, you won't be considered as a startup anymore. And you have to ensure that your idea or funda basis which you want to start a startup has some innovation, some development, some improvement in the existing product or a system or a technology which will make people's life easy or which is making more simpler. You have to prove that your product or your idea or your tech will be able to disrupt the market. That's the criteria which one has to follow. If you're meeting this criteria, then you can register yourself on the startupindia.gov.in as a startup. One registration certificate will come to you, which you can use when you want to claim any exemption or benefit under the Startup India scheme. Last line of the slide to be remembered by all, that if you are making any startup by splitting up any existing entity, it won't be recognized as a startup. So please don't use any existing entity to start your new business. Entity wise, whether you go for a partnership firm or a limited liability partnership or for a private limited company, you have to ensure that you do registration. Partnership firm gets registered with the state or registrar of firm of your respective state. But if you are going ahead with LLP or a company form of organization, then you have to register with your local registrar of companies. Registrar of companies are there for every state. You can apply online. You need not have to go anywhere in person. You can go to mca.gov.in and you can select which kind of company or LLP you want to form. and file a form. For starting a company, you have to file SPICE form. That is the form which is given by ministry, where you will put up all your details of proposed startup, your directors, your shareholders, how much capital you are going to infuse in the company or LLP, and you will submit your application. If you are going with the LLP form, then there is a Philip form which needs to be submitted. In both the entities, you have to have your charter document, which is your memorandum and article, which are very critical documents from your business perspective, because your memorandum and your article will decide to what extent and what kind of business you can do. So when you draft these two documents, please give proper instructions to your counsel or your company secretary who is helping you with the formation of company, to have good control over these two documents, because anything outside these two documents will be illegal for company to perform that operation or that business. So these are most critical document. And if you are going for LLP, you have to have LLP agreement in place, which is again a charter document for a LLP. Ensure that your agreement contains everything you are planning to do, because again, anything outside the scope of agreement will be considered as illegal. And if at all you want to do it, you have to amend this document. Then only you can start with that particular activity. Once your company is registered, you will have 6 months of time to complete certain formalities. First, such formality comes within 30 days. You have to have a board meeting where you will appoint auditor. You will open a bank account where your subscriber of the company will come and put in money. Once you get money from the subscriber towards the capital contribution, you will allot them shares, issue share certificate, make payment of stamp duty, enter the name of the members in the statutory register. Once you register their names in the register, you have to file Form INC 22 within 6 months from the incorporation. Till this point, whatever money you have received from your subscriber as a capital contribution, you cannot start your business. So filing Form INC 22 is the critical one. You have maximum 6 months of time to file this form. Once you file this form, you can start with your business, whatever you have agreed as per your memorandum. I have listed down some other forms which you need to file on regular basis as a company, which is DPT3, which is return of deposit. If you have accepted deposit from your shareholders or your directors. Form MSME, there is Form AOC4, under which every year you will file your company's audited financial statement. As a company or LLP, you have to have this report goes to your registrar of companies every year. The timeline for this report is 6 months from the date of financial year end. Similarly, you have Form MGT7. That form is also yearly filing, which you have to do every year. For this also, within 60 days from the end of September or your AGM date. So once you complete your company's annual general meeting, within 30 days, you will file Form AOC4. Within 60 days, you will file annual return. These all forms are very routine in nature, but very critical, because if you will not file, there will be penalty on company. And the penalty comes in per day basis. So just ensure that once you have legal entity in place, you have to file these forms with registrar on regular basis. For your company registration, together with registering with the registrar of companies, certain basic registration you will require together with this is obtaining permanent account number, tax deduction account number, which is PAN and TAN, goods and service registration number, which is GSTIN. If you're planning for any import or export activities, then you have to apply for IEC code. Shops and establishment is something which is mandatory in every state. You can take registration under Employee Provident Fund. employee state insurance scheme. These are very basic registration which every company needs to take pursuant to local registration guidelines and Shops and Establishment Act. If you go with the company form of organization, then when you do your incorporation, PAN, 10, GSTIN, these all numbers, ESISC number, these all are under single form. You can make an application and get all this registration in place at one go. Once you started your business, I'm sure since you are entrepreneurs and you are working on the technology and all, you will be having some intellectual property which you must have created, basis which you will be doing your business. You can have any kind of intellectual property, may it be trademark, may it be patent, something which can be copyrighted, some design which you can register, some formula which you think it's a unique in nature. So whatever is your intellectual property, it is very important to get it registered so that you have you can establish your right on it and its usage. In startup world, your intellectual property does have value when you go and sell your business in the market. So it is very important to have proper registration for any of your intellectual property, including your company's name and logo. When you start with your company, you will be entering into multiple type of agreements with supplier or maybe some service provider, vendors, any kind of third party services which you will be obtaining. For those service provider, when you enter into any kind of agreement, first of all, you have to ensure that you enter into agreement and there are no verbal contracts. Contract has to be written contract duly signed by both the parties so that in future you do not face any issues. Your basic terms which your contract should have is which party has what obligation. Both the parties' rights, duties, and obligations should be prescribed in detail. If you have some information which is very critical to run your business, please ensure you are entering into agreement which has confidentiality clause so that the second person with whom you are entering into contract is not going and disclosing your secret or your confidential information to third party. You have to put a restriction on use of your intellectual property because that property belongs to you and not to some third party. The most common issues which I have seen with startups is they register their intellectual property in their personal name. Please avoid this mistake. Always register your intellectual property in your company's name, in your startup's name, because once you created a value in the company, your intellectual property also have some value. Don't keep that value in your personal name. Otherwise, investor won't permit that. Investor always want that any kind of intellectual asset is also parked in company and not in your personal name. Other than your intellectual property, indemnity, force measure, termination, which law will govern the document, what if any of the parties not able to meet the obligations undertaken under the contract. All these basic information you have to have in this document to safeguard you and your company from any kind of future disputes. Moving ahead, I will summarize very little on this, the tax benefits which are available to startup, because tax being very little area of my understanding. I'm not a tax expert. But what I understand is if you are a startup, you are qualifying for all the conditions which are laid down for a startup. You will have tax holidays for 3 years out of your 10 years period given by the ministry. Sorry, anybody is saying something? Okay. your GST, there also you have benefit, TDS payments you have benefit available. There are multiple schemes which are introduced by Startup India website. There also multiple schemes are available for you. Angel tax, which was there in the current year's budget, that is also been now liberalized. So if you are able to prove that your angel investor has genuinely invested in your startup and there are no money laundering involved in it, then your angel investor will be able to claim exemption under Section 56. Moving ahead, when you start your startup, couple of agreements you will be encountering with. One such agreement is founder agreement. You being founder of the company, everybody wants you to stick to the company and your goal, how you are going to achieve that. So that will be documented, that what responsibility you will be fulfilling, in what manner, in what time, what compensation will be given to you. So founders agreements are very common in startup world. Any investor before investing in your company would want a commitment from you as a founder, that first you give your commitment to be with the company, to be with your dream. Then they will put in money. Similarly, if you are having your own company, obviously one person cannot run the company. So you will be hiring few key people who will help you take your startup to the next level. For such key employees, you have to have employment contracts. Now, your employment contracts cannot be normal employment contracts, because as a startup, you would be having again very sensitive and confidential information which they will be having access with. So your employee whom you are hiring, their employment contract should also have non-compete clause, that they will not go leave your startup and start similar business to compete with you. There will be confidentiality, that they will not disclose your formulas, your technology to third party. Non-disclosure agreement is another type of agreement which every vendor or every supplier who is giving you some technology or some intellectual services would like to have, because that person also wants that you don't disclose their information to third party. Similarly, you will also put an obligation on them to not to disclose your information to third party. Usually, NDAs are bilateral, not unilateral, because both parties agree that we will not disclose each other's information to external parties. If you are doing some your startup in the partnership form, or you are entering into any partnership with some company, then there is another agreement, that is partnership agreement, which you might enter into, deciding how the partnership will take place, how the business will be run, how the profit will be shared, how losses will be distributed, how decision will be taken, what if partnership is tomorrow we are dissolving, how the dissolution will happen. So that is another form of agreement, which is partnership agreement. Again, any kind of agreement, it is most important to have everything in writing, so that we can minimize any kind of dispute in future. Angel tax, I already mentioned that in recent budget, it's been now changed. So angel tax is no more there. I'll move on to the next slide, which is on the methods of fundraising. Now, this is most interesting part of any startup, that whatever money you could bring in for a business, you would require third party support, maybe in the form of equity or maybe in the form of debt, but you would require more money to run your business. Now, here comes your methods from where you can get most of the money. The very famous one is equity financing, where you can reach out to angel investors who are individual HNIs. So you can reach out to AIFs, alternative investment fund, venture capital fund, angel funds are also there. So you can reach out to them with your business idea. If they like your idea, they will put in equity in your company. which will be your long-term capital when you did not return it immediately. So it will give you longer gestation period to implement your own project. But equity comes with lot of terms and conditions, which I'll be doing in taking you through in coming slides. A second option of raising money is debt, which you can borrow from external party, maybe bank or NBFC or other financial institutions. Being a private company, please bear in mind you cannot raise money from any individual who is not your shareholder or who is not your director. Private company has very limited source of capital or debt, I would say, very limited source of debt, which is you can take from your shareholder, you can take from your directors, relative of directors, or reach out to financial institutions, banks. Don't take money from third party. It is absolutely illegal under the Companies Act. Crowdfunding is another way, but then that will bring you very small amount of funding. So that can be used for other businesses, but not a startup or business where you need to scale up at a high level. There you need equity or debt financing only. If you see, we as a Black Soil, we also do debt financing, but then our debt is always coupled with equity also. So we call it venture debt. Little bit of equity portion is also which we invest in our portfolio companies. So these are the mix and match of few of the funding avenues which you can explore when you are looking for money for your startup. When you raise money through equity, there will be a very famous agreement which we enter into is a shareholders agreement. I'm not sure if you have heard of this terminology before or not, but then under this agreement, the person who is putting in money in your company will be defining your timeline, your business, what role you as a founder will play in this business, what you will do with the capital which that person is infusing, how that capital will be returned to him, what rights your investor will have, what say will that investor have in your business, in your day-to-day business running. All these rights will be defined under the shareholders agreement. Some typical legal rights are there under the shareholders agreement, which I'll discuss in coming slides. When you raise money, your investor will perform due diligence on you. They will see how strongly your compliances are, be it your company's compliances, be it your shops and establishment compliances, be it your income tax compliances, GST, TDS. We have n number of laws in India which are governing a company. And yeah, as an investor, we expect that you comply with all of them. So every investor do thorough due diligence of their startup before they give debt or equity funding. So it is very critical for a startup to keep their records neat and clean. Your accounting should be accurate. Your tax should be very clean. Your ROC filing should be very neat and clean and on time. There should not be delays in filing. You should not be missing your deadlines, which are prescribed by the statutory laws. So these are the basic fundas you have to keep in mind if you want to start your startup and bring funding from external parties. Further avenues of funding are external commercial borrowings. This is the again kind of a loan which you take from entity located outside India. Now this is the most difficult form of borrowing because this is coupled with lot of regulations and filing which is required to be done on the part of startup. I know you would not be doing it or yourself. You will have agencies hired who is expert in knowing this. But making the compliances on time is critical, is the key here. Because FEMA rules in India are very strict. So you have to be very particular about borrowing money from outside or even raising capital from outside. If you are bringing in foreign direct investment in your startup, then you have to have your FEMA compliance in place. I have one slide where all the compliances are listed down. I'll discuss it when it comes. So this is your normal fundraise process, which start with the negotiation between you and your prospective investor. You both will agree to certain terms and conditions, what kind of product you want to deliver and what kind of return your investor is expecting by selling your product. Once you both come at consensus, you can sign term sheet which will prescribe what amount of money will be given, how money will be utilized, how that money return will be generated on that money. Once term sheet is signed, your investor will perform due diligence on you. If everything is found in order, they will proceed with putting all the terms and conditions in a formal agreement, formal document, which is called shareholders agreement. Once your shareholders agreement is done and signed, for a company to have those terms and conditions of shareholders agreement in articles of association is must. So you have to get your articles of association amended to have terms and conditions of shareholders agreement incorporated. I'm not sure if you remember, but we discussed on MOA and AOA in the first slide when we saw incorporation process of a company. I forgot to tell, if anybody wants to ask anything, please feel free to ask in between. Otherwise, I'll keep talking. So these are the terms basis which the investor will decide how much money is to be given you and at what valuation and how much stake your investor will take in your company, like 10% stake, 5% stake, 20% stake. That all decided basis the valuation which is assigned to your company, basis your projections, your current business growth, and the future projections. Once the valuation is decided, you can decide the number of share and price per share at which you will give shares to your investor and you will take money. Yeah, yes, Saida. Sorry.
Okay, I had a question that in order to receive the like funds from the shooting stars is in an important condition to get a companies registered.
I think Weber can answer that
Right.
question.
Right. See, these are two different things. Like the one is the All India Women Only Startathon program that we are running. In this, you my audible, right? So in this, if you win,
Yes, yes.
there is a prize money at the end, right? That being said, there will also be some government grants that will be recommending to eligible startups. Now, to be able to apply for those startups, it's necessary to get the startup registered, right? Like Ethel was also sharing. Plus, again,
Mm-hmm.
on similar lines, if you're really, really serious about the idea that you have, it is recommended that maybe if not now, but in the next 2 to 6 months, you should look forward to getting your company registered. That being said, the prize money for the program is not subject to whether you have your company registered or not.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, moving on. So when you take equity capital from your investor, they might ask for certain dividends or something. So you need to decide how much percent of dividend you will be paying to your investor. But this dividend is not mandatory thing because being a startup, you would not have so much of money that you can pay someone as a dividend. But you can keep some minimum amount, maybe 0.001% of the capital contributed by the investor, because this is the typical industry norm right now. basis which shares are being issued. When you enter into a shareholders agreement, you would hear two terms very frequently: completion of CP and completion of CS, which is condition precedent and condition subsequent. Condition precedent is when your investor is giving you money, certain matters which are required to be completed under Companies Act, they would want you to finish upfront. There are certain compliances which you need to do post taking money from your investor that will qualify as a condition subsequent. Your shareholders agreement will have some typical rights, which I'm just narrating you to just make you familiar with those terminologies. A very first such right is preemptive right. So suppose Mr. A is coming to your company and giving you 1 crore check, then he will ask for a preemptive right under shareholders agreement. Preemptive rights means next time when you are in need of capital, you will offer that right to Mr. A first. If Mr. A says that no, I'll be not giving you further money, then you go and raise from the third party. That is what preemptive rights mean. Another is ratcheting. Ratcheting is of two types. One is full ratchet and one is the weighted average. This is means that if you have given share to your investor at 10 rupee price, if you have new investor coming in to whom if you are giving shares at 8 rupees, then your old investor to whom you have given shares at 10 rupees, we will ask for a compensation of that loss of 2 rupees. That is your ratcheting refers to. Another right is tag along right. This right means that if you are selling your shares in the company, you have to tag your investor along so that your investor can also sell his shares. Another one is affirmative rights, or very popularly known as reserve matters. Here your investor will list down couple of activities or actions. That means if your company or you are doing any of those actions, you compulsory have to go to your investor, take the written consent. If they say yes, then only you can proceed with that activity. Otherwise, you cannot do it. Next is liquidation preference. This term means that if your investor has invested in your company, the day your company is getting sold or acquired in the market, your investor would want a preference that I will exit first, and being a founder, you will exit last. There are certain investors who prefer to prescribe some threshold that I will require 1x liquidation preference, 1.2x liquidation preference. This all depends on how commercially you negotiate with your investor and decide. But usually it's just a preference in redemption. Multiple is very rarely agreed upon. If you have very big fund coming to your company, then they make you agree on certain threshold. Basis that they take liquidation preference. Arbitration and governing law, these are very two important clauses which you have to have in your agreement, so that if there is any dispute in future, you can directly go to arbitrator and get it resolved. If not, then you can go to the nearest court of law which is in your jurisdiction, and you can get a legal help. ROFO and ROFR, I'll just give you
Just had a question in the previous slide.
yeah.
First, you first spoke on the preemptive rights, right? So I just want to know if this overrides the Company Act. You said in the Company Act that we are on one who starts the startup cannot take money from person outside the startup. Like they can take only from the people involved, like investors or co-founders or something like that. So preemptive rights is you override that and you get from outside also, is it? I mean, you can correct me if my understanding is wrong.
So, Sushmita, preemptive rights refers to the related to the capital. Now, capital in the company can be taken from anybody, subject to FEMA guidelines. When I said that you cannot take money from third party, that was for borrowing. Borrowing,
That's
that is your loan, cannot be from third party. Equity can be from third party.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Now these are two again legal terminology, ROFO and ROFR, which you will encounter when you do your shareholders agreement. ROFO is right of first offer. ROFR is right of first refusal. Right of first offer is comes when if you want to sell your shares, or suppose your investor want to sell his share. As a founder, you will tell him, if you want to sell your share, you will first come to me. If I am not willing to purchase your shares at a price offered by you, then you go to third party and sell your shares. That is ROFO. Your ROFR is your investor received offer from third party that I want to buy your shares. Your investor coming in to you and telling you that ABC is interested in buying my shares at so and so price. Now, if you are willing to pay him same price, you pay and finish the transaction. That is called right of first refusal. That is, your investor first came to you, giving you right to refuse. If you don't refuse, but if you accept, you will buy his share. These are very typical rights which goes into every shareholders agreement. So I thought I'll just take you through those rights. So when you actually go and see your shareholders agreement in future, you will be little bit at ease. Next is executive compensation. Now, as a founder and also when you hire some employees, critical employees to run your business, you have to have employment agreement. Now your employment agreement will have this basic minimum clauses, which is on about the remuneration, any employee stock options which you will be giving to yourself or that employee, what will be the code of conduct, as I said, non-compete, non-solicit, how the intellectual property will be treated. So suppose you hire an engineer to create a tech. Now, since you have hired, your employment agreement should clearly state that whatever tech you will create shall be company's property and not your personal property. This clause should be there clearly in the employment agreement. Your person or employee should not disclose your tech or confidential product or data, how the employment will be terminated. If the employment is terminated because of bad causes, some cause which he did, then in that case, how his remuneration will be treated, whether he'll be paid or his remuneration will be forfeited. If he has any shares, whether shares will be retained or will be forfeited. All these terms and conditions you have to mention in the employment contract. I'll just brief you a little on employee stock option plan. This is the plan which generally startup offers to attract a good talent. As a startup, you might not be having a lot of money to pay salaries to people who are coming and joining your company to make it big. So as the alternative method, what you can do, you can offer them share in your company at lesser cost or free of cost. That is for you to decide as a founder if you want to offer them at lesser the cost or free of cost. So these shares will be given to employee after they complete certain projects or maybe a certain number of years in the organization, then they will be eligible to get these shares. This is the kind of compensation which you can offer, because as you grow, your company will grow, value of shares will also grow. So the person who worked for your company for 5 years, suppose you paid them very less sum at the beginning of the tenure, at the end of 5 years, you must have made your company big. Your share price must have gone up. So that person will be compensated for that 5 years tenure. This is the compliance slide which I was referring to. I have made. This has very routine compliances which a company has to perform. I have divided in two parts. One is the Register of Company Compliances, which are mandatory by virtue of Companies Act. Other table gives you idea on the compliances which are required to be done when you have foreign investment in your company. I'll take up ROC compliances quickly. You first such compliances, you have to conduct the company's board meeting very regularly. Harshita Reddy, you want to ask something? I can see your name flashing here. Okay,
No,
I'll
ma'am,
move on.
nothing.
Okay. Yeah, so ROC compliance wise, you have to conduct board meeting at least once every quarter. You have to conduct general meeting of your shareholders once a year. There are certain documents which require to be or certain actions which require your shareholders approval, which as a board member or a director of company, that decision you alone can't take. You have to take permission from all of your shareholders. So those compliances you need to consider when you perform any of those actions. Some of actions to list down are, if you are raising further capital by way of private placement. Now, some of words might sound you like Latin and Greek, but it will be difficult for me to explain you those words. If you are issuing further shares by way of a private placement, then you have to take your members' approval. You cannot directly issue shares. If there is any special resolution which you pass, taking your shareholders' approval, there is a mandatory filing of a form MGT 14 with MCA. If you are offering your shareholders share, usually it happens through a process which is called private placement. Now, if it's a private placement, you have to take shareholders approval, file form MGT 14. These two formalities are completed, then you give offer letter to your investor to subscribe to your shares. Before that, your investor cannot subscribe. Once you offer them to subscribe to your share under the form Pass 4, they will put in money in the bank account. When you do private placement for fundraising, please ensure you have opened a separate bank account that is used only and only for accepting capital commitment and nothing else. You cannot use that account for any routine business purpose. It is prohibited. Your offer subscription will happen in that account. Once money is received, you will close the offer and you will allot shares to your investor. Once shares are allotted, you have to file intimation to Registrar of Companies in the form Pass 3. Now, these are all legal numbers to assign to form, but at later stage, you will encounter all of these forms and terms when you actually do equity fundraising or debt fundraising. So once you file form Pass 3, then whatever money you have received in that separate bank account, that money you can touch and use for your business. Unless and until you file Pass 3, you cannot use money from your bank account. Whosoever investor has subscribed to your company's shares, you have to make form Pass 5, where the records will be maintained as to which investor has subscribed to how much money. Once your shareholders allotment is done, you will make a stamp duty payment and issue them shares. You have to give them share certificate, which will have details of how many shares they applied for. How many shares you have allotted them, and what are their folio numbers and number of shares. FEMA compliances I'll take, which are mandatory under Foreign Investment Management Act of India. This applies when you take money from a person or entity located outside India. There are two ways to take money outside India. One is automatic route, one is approval route. Approval route comes when there are sanction list countries from where you are getting money, or those countries which are sharing land border with India. If you are getting money from any of these countries, you have to take permission from Reserve Bank of India, prior permission, then only you can take money from them. If these countries from where you are accepting money doesn't fall under the approval route, then automatically you can get in money in your company's bank account under automatic route. Once you get money in your company's bank account, from a perspective, what you have to do is you have to reach out to your authorized dealer bank, which is AD bank. Tell them to give you FIRC copy. FIRC is Foreign Inward Remittance Certificate. This is very critical and important certificate. Unless you have this certificate, RBI will not give approval on your remittance. So FIRC is must to take. Just give me break of 1 minute. Sorry, I'll continue. Second certificate is KYC certificate, which is Know Your Client certificate. This certificate also your bank will provide, which will have details of the person or entity who has remitted money to your company. Now, there are prescribed format of KYC and FIRC, which are available with all the AD banks, and they will give you in that format. But what you have to do is you have to chase them and get it done, because there are timeline attached to the filing. Once you get money from any foreign entity or party, within 60 days, you have to file a return with RBI. What money you have received, for what purpose you have received, whether you have done compliances for the purpose for which it was received. This entire data RBI collects from you. And in that, one of the data is FIRC and KYC. These two documents also you have to submit with RBI. So please ensure you have these two documents. Last form is the form FCGPR, which you will be filing with all the details once you complete allotment of shares to your investor. This form comes at last, but most critical form, unless and until this form gets approved, your FDI will not be considered as legally included in the company. So please ensure that your FCGPR gets approval and there is a number assigned to you once that approval comes. That number is very critical because the person or entity to whom you have allotted the shares and for whom you have filed this FCGPR, if that entity tomorrow selling or transferring its shares, this FCGPR number needs to be quoted there to complete the transfer. Unless you quote this number, your transfer will not be approved by RBI. And this entire liability of FEMA compliance is on the company. So whenever you have FDI in your company, please ensure you complete all these compliances. I think that's it from my side. I have given you a brief overview of all the compliances which as a startup you have to follow. If you have any question, you can ask me.
Thanks, Hetal. I also want to say that I learned a lot. I would request all the participants to ask as many as questions possible. Hetal is an expert who has been working with startups and investors from past 15 years now, and during the peak of the startup revolution. I would suggest that take advantage of this moment and ensure that you have the best knowledge to help you start your business.
We learned a lot, Hital. I think it was a very technical, heavy, presentation, but kudos to you. I have not seen such a low rate, meaning every time we start a session, there are a lot of people who drop off. So thank you so much for sharing so much. It is very useful, right? We do not know a lot of things, so thank you for taking the time. Just while everyone asks question to you, just to add a couple of things, there is a feedback form that I've shared in the comment. Please fill that form. I'll also request you to turn on your camera so that we can take a participant picture that we can use on social media and other places once before you leave. So please do that. Participant, if anyone has any question on any technicality, uh, please go ahead.
I think this session was actually very technical for everybody. So now they don't have any questions. Or maybe I explained in such a detailed manner that they don't have any questions.
Yeah, let's assume that.
Yeah, I'll
But
take on positive side.
But guys, Hetal's time is very expensive and valuable, right? It's not easy to get her 1 hour like this. If someone had to book this session, they would have had to pay a lot. So I would really say that if you have any question, no question is stupid, no question is this thing. You don't worry about anything. Just ask if you have any kind of doubts. She will be happy to help. And this is actually really we are here to help you only.
I just wanted to know, since it's a very technical session, could the PowerPoint be shared with all of us? Because I at least don't come from a legal background. So many of the terms are new to me. So
The
can it be
PowerPoint will
shared?
be shared. It can be shared with you guys. It's not a problem. But the thing is that it's like a book, right? You read the book,
Yeah.
and when you have the teacher in front of you, and you can just ask whatever you have in your mind. For example, when Hetal said that you have to negotiate with your investor, or when you hire a new team member for a senior role, for example, a tech lead, right? Who will do the coding for your app, right? And
Yeah.
there have been instances where these kind of people have taken equity in the company, but later on, they did not do the job. And the CEO, the founder, could not fire them because they already had the equity, and they did not have a clause in their agreement that in case you are not able to make this app, you will have to leave the organization. So, such kind of things Hetal was mentioning, you have to ensure that are in agreements, are discussed, have everyone's signatures so that you are protected and your startup is protected. So anything related to that also you want to ask, trademark, any legal implications that can happen, you can ask them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, thank you. I'll thank Shooting Star and Vaibhav for arranging this session. I will also would like to thank Neelam, who helped me a lot in making this PPT. And last but not the least, Black Soil again, who gave me this opportunity to interact with such a young audience. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any question on this, yeah, you can reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer, and this PPT will be shared with all of you. I'll sign off and take off the PPT now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Hetal, for doing this. Like Neelam said, if we had to afford it, we would have probably not have been able to afford it. So thank you so much for doing it just for the sheer intent of sharing your knowledge and helping all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kirtana has a question. Kirtana, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
So, hello.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, ma'am. I'm Kirtana.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yes, I'm currently an undergrad student. I'm
Okay.
18 years old. So I am a very I'm very enthusiastic in business and etc. I really want to have a startup of my own. This might be a very generic question, might not pertain to whatever you taught us.
Okay.
So I, as an 18-year-old, I believe that this is a very good age for me to get started into the business world and get hands-on experience. So if I were to actually, start a startup and, do all the registration and legal compliances, what is something you would suggest me?
A suggestion the what things you are asking? I mean,
Ma'am,
in
I would
form of
like
your
for
business?
you to,
Right. So, like, I think
sorry.
if I understood it correctly, let me refine it, Ethel. So maybe she's trying to ask at what stage of your idea should you think about getting your company registered, and if you decide to do so, which, out of all the available options, how should you get it registered? Is it private limited or an LLP? So, Kirtana, you can correct me if I've misunderstood your question.
Yes, sir, that would be a very proper version. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
so to answer that, since you have already attained the age of majority, you are eligible to start your own company. But to start a company, you need at least two people with yourself. So yourself and maybe your partner who can help you in the forming a company, because you might be having both might be having similar ideas. And I would suggest company form of organization, because as you grow, as you move ahead, you enter the market, you will reach out to investors. Company form of organization is always preferable and favorite and safest means of entity amongst all the investors versus partnership or LLP. So if you are very much serious, go with the company method, start your company, start your product there, and make it big.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Right.
Just to add, Kirtana, if you're passionate about starting a startup, please don't hesitate or hold back. We have very few women entrepreneurs, very few women investors. We really, really need more and more women to start their businesses. If you're in doubt what to start with, or if you have two, three ideas, just pilot. Without registering, just start selling, just start building, just start trying with one customer, two people, whatever, and get feedback and then build and then register, and then you will know what to do and how to finalize it.
I agree with Neelam. Don't hold yourself back. Just start with it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you very much.
Saika has her hand raised.
Yeah, Saika.
Hello, ma'am. This is Saika Hamid. I just had one question, and that is like, at what stage of a startup are we supposed to start hiring? Like, once the app is completely developed and a company is registered, after that, or like on the very initial stage, are we supposed to hire? Like,
So I would suggest hire when you are not able to manage on your own. As a founder, you
okay,
will be having a lot of responsibilities to perform. Rather
yes,
than just building a tech, you will be having
mm-hmm.
100 things to look after.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you are
Okay,
confident that your product is almost near finishing, or it's something which you can now pass on the responsibility to somebody else,
mm-hmm.
so that
Yes,
you can focus on growing the business rather than making that product.
okay, okay.
I'll
Okay, thank you so
I'll
much,
add
ma'am.
an example to it. You can look up the Oyo story. So when the Oyo founder started it, he just started himself. He had no employees, and he started working for the hotels and clean the rooms and started listing on Oyo. When he found out that his business case is right, he reached
Mm-hmm.
out to investors and he raised little money, and then he started hiring to expand. So first, you
Okay.
have to see what
Yeah.
is your business,
Mm-hmm.
and do you know everything? For example, if it is sales heavy and you know
Mm-hmm.
sales, then you don't need to hire someone in the beginning, right? Till you
Yes,
generate revenue
definitely.
or till you make your first pitch to an investor. But
Mm-hmm.
if, for
Yes.
example, if it is tech and you need a
Mm-hmm.
CTO because you don't know coding, then you need a
Yeah.
employee or a partner. Now
Mm-hmm.
that also you have to decide. Do you need a co-founder or you need an employee? So you have to
Okay.
evaluate it according to your
Mm-hmm.
business idea and your path.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, as you said that we have, suppose we have the idea, we have the co-founder, but what about the capital? Like, if somebody is trying to make a machine which is totally based upon AI. So suppose we have the co-founder who can actually make it, but we lack the capital. So what am I supposed to do then?
So for lack of capital, of course, you need to reach out to investors. You have to step into the market and share your idea, your machine, how the machine can be proven remunerative, how it can generate revenue. Then they won't mind funding for your machine also.
So should we like first make a prototype and then actually like show it to the investors, or beforehand we just make the idea and through a PPT or 3D model and then do the idea screening?
I would suggest have something in hand which you can at least show to investor. Of course, there are startups who have just created business basis the PPT because they were quite clear in their head. But then this I have seen happening way back in 2011, 2012 when this funda was very new. Now investors have become very experienced in the market. So they would also want how much you can prove yourself. So if you have prototype with you, my suggestion would be at least reach out to them.
Okay, ma'am. That means you
But
are saying to make
I
a
think
live demonstration.
similar question has come from Nandini also in the message box.
okay, I would
So
say that you can also reach out to incubators and accelerators. And when you say technology driven or a machine, right? There are a lot of STEM oriented organizations or institutions. Say, for example, Amrita University in Chennai. They also offer grant. IIT Mandi has a grant program. Similarly, there are other organizations also who provide you funding, a grant funding. And for women-oriented startups also, there is grant and funding. Women in tech also has grant funding. You have to find these themes where you fit and keep applying. Now you have to work, get into an incubator, get into an accelerator, and start working on the prototype. Initially, formal investors will not be able to fund you. Initially you will have to do friends and family or your incubators and then angel investors, and then for the seed round you will be able to receive the funding from investors. But yeah, I think other people will help you in terms of materializing, making it mature, making the business model mature, and that would be helpful, I feel.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all for joining in. I'll request all of you if you can please come on camera. We'll take a quick picture before we, close the program. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Vaibhav, like my camera is on since the starting of
No,
the session, but I don't think my face is appearing.
no problem. No problem, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Sejal. Requesting others if you can also please come on camera. Thank you, Purbasha. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Ritika. Hello, Neelam.
That's fine.
Right, we'll just wait for a couple of more minutes. Requesting others if you can also please turn on your camera. We should at least have one screen of videos on, right? Fiza, Preeti, Purni, Shakti, Kiran, Sandhya, Isha, Jyoti. Just 2 minutes, not more than that. Just want to take a photo of all of us here. Should I quit already that nobody more is going to turn on their camera, or should I wait for 30 more seconds? What do you think? Okay, somebody is trying to join the session now. Okay, maybe from laptop they're joining now. Okay, perfect. So thank you all for joining in. We cannot see little ma'am, but thank you for this session. Thank you, Neelam, for the program, and thank you all for joining in. It was great. I'm glad that you guys stayed till now because a lot of these things were very, very new, and I'm sure they would have been equally difficult for you to grasp. But cheers to the entrepreneurship spirit that you're here and still trying to understand what seems very difficult. Thank you all. Great. Have a
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for this informative session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Please fill the feedback form that I've shared in the chat, and we'll come back to you with more sessions in the upcoming week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank